The alliance between humans and Council forces changed everything. Admiral Youngjae worked with Admiral Mion to coordinate their fleets, while Captain Isul led combined strike teams against the ancient weapon platforms that Taehyun had activated throughout the galaxy. Council leader Siwoo arrived at the battle zone aboard his personal flagship, bringing with him proof of Taehyun's treachery. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records showing payments to mercenary groups, communication logs detailing attacks on human colonies, most damning of all, genetic samples taken from human prisoners and sold to laboratories for experimentation. Councilman Taehyun has been operating a shadow government for decades, Siwoo told the emergency session. He's been profiting from the systematic elimination of human settlements while telling us that humans were extinct, but Lieutenant Chae-young discovered something even more disturbing in the captured data files. The weapon platforms Taehyun had activated weren't just targeting humans. They were programmed to eliminate anyone who might expose his conspiracy, including most of the current council leadership. Sir, these platforms are ancient hegemony designs, she reported to Admiral Ji-sung. They're designed to sterilize entire worlds of all life forms. Admiral Ji-sung studied the tactical displays showing the weapon platforms coming online across the galaxy. Each one was powerful enough to destroy a planet, and there were dozens of them. If they all activated simultaneously, billions would die. How long do we have? He asked. 6 hours until the platforms reach full power, Chae-young replied. Then we'd better move fast. The human and council fleets split into strike groups, each one targeting a different weapon platform. Captain Yuna led the first combined team to the Vega platform, the largest and most heavily defended installation. Working together, humans and council forces proved devastatingly effective. Human tactical expertise combined with council technology created strategies that neither side could have developed alone. The platforms that should have taken hours to disable fell within minutes. Human Team 7, this is Council Squadron 6, came a transmission over the battle network. We're reading massive energy buildups in your sector. Do you need assistance? Negative, Council 6, replied the human team leader. We've got this. But thanks for watching our backs. It was the first time in 2,000 years that humans and other galactic species had fought side by side as allies rather than enemies. The final confrontation came at the Nexus Core, the galaxy's central communication hub. Taehyun had made his last stand there, surrounded by the few mercenary forces still loyal to him. But he wasn't just a corrupt politician anymore. The years of secret power had twisted him into something darker. Captain Minho of the human assault ship, Dauntless worked alongside Engineer Salmon from the Council Technical Corps to disable the Nexus defense systems. Despite coming from completely different worlds, they found they worked well together. The human approach is so direct, Salmon said as Minho used brute force to tear apart an energy barrier. The Council way is elegant, Minho replied as Salmon's precise calculations disabled a weapon system with surgical accuracy. Maybe we can learn from each other. The battle for the Nexus Core lasted 3 hours. Taehyun's forces fought with the desperation of beings who knew they faced execution for their crimes, but they were outnumbered and outmaneuvered by the combined human council force. When the fighting finally ended, Taehyun stood alone in the central control chamber, surrounded by the evidence of his crimes. The man who had once been a respected council member now looked like what he had always been, a predator who had grown fat on the suffering of others. You don't understand, he told his captors. The humans are Death Worlders. They'll consume the galaxy if we don't stop them. Admiral Junho entered the chamber, flanked by Admiral Youngjae. The two commanders had become unlikely allies, bonded by their shared commitment to protecting innocent lives. Councilman Taehyun, Junho said calmly, you're under arrest for crimes against humanity and violations of galactic law. I was protecting the galaxy from your kind. Taehyun snarled. You were murdering civilians for profit, Youngjae corrected. There's a difference. The revelation of Taehyun's conspiracy sent shockwaves through galactic society. For decades, he had been organizing attacks on human settlements while publicly supporting the quarantine that kept humans isolated. He had turned the galaxy's fear of Death Worlders into a profitable business built on genocide. But his defeat also opened new possibilities. For the first time in 2 millennia, humans and the galactic community could work together openly. The joint colonies established in the aftermath of the crisis became symbols of what cooperation could achieve. Human engineering combined with council science created settlements that could thrive in conditions that would challenge either species alone. Captain Yuna, now promoted to admiral, oversaw the first joint exploration mission beyond the galactic rim. Her crew included humans, council species, and even some former mercenaries who had switched sides during the final battle. "Sensors are detecting an inhabitable system 12 light-years ahead," reported her science officer. "Set course," Yuna ordered. "Let's see what's out there." The galaxy had changed. The signal that had once threatened to summon destruction had instead summoned hope. Humans were no longer the mysterious Deathworlders hiding in the Silent Zone. They were partners in a larger community, contributing their strength and resilience to projects that benefited everyone. On Earth, now reopened to galactic contact, children learned about aliens who had once been enemies but were now friends. On Council worlds, young beings studied human adaptability as an example of what life could accomplish under the harshest conditions. The fear that had separated the species for 2,000 years was replaced by curiosity and respect. Humans weren't the savage conquerors of legend. They were survivors, innovators, and protectors who had learned to thrive in impossible conditions. And when new threats emerged from the dark spaces between galaxies, they faced them together. The children of 1,000 worlds united by the understanding that diversity was strength, and cooperation was survival. The signal had crossed into alien space carrying a message of distress. It departed carrying something far more valuable, proof that even the most bitter enemies could become the strongest allies when they chose understanding over fear. In the end, the Deathworlders had indeed returned to change the galaxy, but instead of bringing destruction, they had brought the possibility of something better, a future where no species stood alone against the darkness, and the strength of one became the strength of all. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what it needed. 3 months after the destruction of Emperor Vextar, Admiral Tay stood before the assembled Galactic Council on the neutral world of Concordia. The chamber was filled with representatives from over 200 species, all trying to understand the new reality that humanity had created. The council chamber itself reflected the galaxy's ancient attempt at peaceful coexistence, crystalline architecture that resonated with harmonious frequencies. Seating arranged to ensure no species held a position of dominance over others, and translation systems that rendered every voice in tones of diplomatic neutrality. But the harmony was shattered the moment Admiral Tay began to speak. "Honored representatives," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who commanded the galaxy's most powerful military force. "Humanity did not seek the role we now occupy. We answered a cry for help. Nothing more, nothing less." Council Chairman Zelthar, an ancient being from the first species to achieve interstellar flight, gestured with limbs that had witnessed the rise and fall of a dozen galactic civilizations. "Admiral Tay, your species has fundamentally altered the balance of power that has maintained peace for millennia. How can you claim to seek nothing more than helping those in need?" "Because that's exactly what we did," Tay replied bluntly. "The Villani asked for help. We provided it. The Korath threatened genocide. We stopped them. If that alters your balance of power, perhaps your balance was built on allowing the strong to prey on the weak." The statement sent ripples of shock through the assembled delegates. No species had ever challenged the Council's authority so directly, or questioned the philosophical foundations of galactic governance. Representative Kixmore of the Hegemony Worlds rose from his seat, his armored form bristling with barely controlled hostility. "Your help involved the systematic extermination of the Korath leadership and the fragmentation of their empire. You turned a stable regional power into dozens of chaotic remnant factions. We turned a genocidal empire into manageable fragments that can't threaten innocent species." Admiral Nam interjected from her position at Tay's side. "Would you prefer we had left them intact to continue their extermination campaigns?" "We would prefer you had followed established protocols," Kixmore replied. "Diplomatic negotiations, economic sanctions, gradual pressure through legitimate channels." Captain Sora, who had just returned from escort duty with the reformed Korath faction, couldn't hide her disgust. "How many Villani would have died while you were following established protocols? How many worlds would have been stripped bare while you negotiated?" The debate that followed revealed the fundamental divide between humanity and the rest of the galaxy. Other species saw warfare as a last resort after diplomacy had failed. Humans saw diplomacy as a luxury that innocent beings couldn't afford to wait for when genocide was in progress. You solve problems with violence, accused Representative Thandra of the Peaceful Coalition. We solve problems with whatever method actually works, Tay replied. If diplomatic solutions were effective against species like the Korath, they would still be alive and the Volani would be extinct. The session continued for hours, with representatives alternately condemning and praising humanity's actions. Some species demanded that
humans be censured for their excessive use of
force. Others begged for protection treaties that would guarantee human intervention if they faced similar threats. But the most significant moment came when young counsel, Speaker Valana of the Volani Confederacy, requested permission to address the assembly. Honored representatives, she began, her voice carrying the musical quality that made Volani's speech so distinctive. You debate the morality of human actions as if they were optional. For my people, they were not. Without human intervention, we would be extinct. Our art, our culture, our children, all would be dust and memory. She paused, looking directly at the species that were criticizing humanity. You speak of established protocols and diplomatic solutions. Where were these protocols when we sent 11 distress calls begging for help? Where were your diplomatic solutions when billions of my people were dying? The chamber fell silent. Valana's words carried the weight of survivor testimony that no political rhetoric could counter. The humans changed our society, she continued. They showed us that peace without the ability to defend it is merely a beautiful way to die. Some of my people see this as corruption. I see it as growing up. Elder Kildar, representing the traditional Volani faction, rose to respond. Child, you have been seduced by human philosophies that reduce existence to violence and survival. We are more than animals fighting for territory. Yes? Valana replied quietly. And now we are more than victims waiting to be slaughtered. The humans didn't corrupt us. They gave us the chance to choose our own future. The exchange highlighted the deeper transformation occurring across the galaxy. Species that had lived under the protection of galactic law were discovering that law was meaningless without the power to enforce it. Captain Ryu's intelligence reports, presented to the Council with clinical precision, revealed the scope of these changes. Since human intervention in the Korath conflict, we've documented 47 requests for protection treaties, 23 preemptive military buildups, and 16 internal governmental collapses as species debate whether to align with or against human interests. In other words, Chairman Zelthar observed sadly, you've militarized the galaxy. We've revealed that the galaxy was already militarized, Ryu corrected. The difference is that now peaceful species have someone willing to protect them from the predators. The formal session ended without resolution, but private negotiations continued through the night. By morning, 17 species had signed mutual defense treaties with Earth. 12 others had formed a coalition dedicated to containing human expansion. The rest remained neutral, waiting to see how the new galactic order would develop. As the delegates departed Concordia, Admiral Tay received an urgent communication from Captain Hana aboard the Soul's Pride. A new distress call had been intercepted, this time from the far reaches of the Andromeda Galaxy access point. Admiral, Hana reported, long-range sensors have detected signs of massive destruction in the outer spiral. Multiple star systems showing evidence of planetary devastation. We're receiving fragmentary transmissions that suggest an unknown aggressor is systematically eliminating entire civilizations. Tai studied the preliminary data with growing concern. The scale of destruction was beyond anything the Korath had attempted. Entire solar systems were being sterilized, not conquered. Any indication of who's responsible? Negative, Admiral. But the pattern suggests a level of military capability that exceeds anything in our current threat assessments. Whatever's doing this makes the Korath Empire look primitive. On Serenity Prime, Commander Wu received the same intelligence briefing. He stood in the observation deck of the human military base that now protected the Volani homeworld, watching alien children play in gardens that existed only because human weapons had made them safe. The irony wasn't lost on him. Humanity had become the galaxy's protectors, but their very success had revealed larger threats lurking in the cosmic darkness. Young Council Speaker Velana joined him at the observation window, her expression thoughtful as she watched human and Volani children playing together, a sight that would have been impossible just months earlier. Commander, she said quietly, do you think we made the right choice? Accepting human protection, changing our society, abandoning the pure pacifism of our ancestors? Wu considered the question carefully. I think you made the only choice that allowed you to survive with dignity. The alternative was extinction, but at what cost? We're no longer the people we were. No, Wu agreed. You're the people you chose to become. That's more than the Korath would have allowed you. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert. Another distress call had been received, this time from multiple sources simultaneously. The unknown aggressor was moving faster than anyone had anticipated, and its path of destruction was heading toward the core worlds of the galaxy. Within hours, the Soul's Pride and a fleet of human vessels were preparing for departure. The galaxy had cried for help once again, and Earth was preparing to answer in the only way it knew how. But this time, they wouldn't be going alone. Vellana watched from the surface as Vellani, ships newly constructed, with human assistance and crewed by volunteers, who had chosen to abandon pure pacifism, joined. The human fleet in orbit. The galaxy had changed. Species that had never considered violence were learning to defend themselves. Others were discovering that protection required strength, not just good intentions. The old order of peaceful coexistence maintained by mutual helplessness was giving way to something new. As the combined human-Vellani fleet departed for the outer spiral, Commander Sora received confirmation of what many had suspected. The unknown aggressor wasn't just another conquest-minded empire. It was something that had been watching the galaxy for eons, waiting for the right moment to harvest the accumulated civilizations of countless worlds. They had been waiting for the galaxy to develop sufficient technology and population to be worth their attention, and humanity's intervention against the Korath had apparently convinced them that the harvest was ready to begin. The news of Emperor Vextar's death spread across the galaxy faster than hyperspace travel could carry it. Within days, every major civilization knew that humanity had not merely defeated the Korath Empire, they had decapitated it with surgical precision. On the crystal world of Andromedus, the High Council of the Zelani Republic held an emergency session. These ancient beings had watched civilizations rise and fall for millennia, always maintaining their careful neutrality. Now they faced a decision that could determine their species' survival. The humans eliminated a galactic superpower in less than a month, Council Elder Mordun observed, his crystalline form flickering with nervous energy. Their military capabilities exceed our most pessimistic projections. More disturbing is their willingness to use those capabilities, added Elder Veltara. They targeted leadership directly, used psychological warfare, and showed no interest in negotiation or compromise. They fought to exterminate, not to conquer. The debate that followed would be repeated in council chambers across the galaxy. Every species now had to answer the same fundamental question. In a universe where humans existed, were you safer as their ally or their enemy? Commander Dan of the Earth Diplomatic Corps found himself at the center of this galactic reckoning. His mission was to reassure nervous alien governments that humanity posed no threat to peaceful species. But his very presence often had the opposite effect. Dan was a veteran of the Korath conflict, and it showed. His calm demeanor masked reflexes honed by combat, and his casual references to acceptable risk levels and threat assessment protocols reminded everyone that human diplomats were also human soldiers. Ambassador, the Trilarian, Foreign Minister asked during their first meeting, "Can you guarantee that humanity will never turn its military might against peaceful worlds?" "Minister," Dan replied carefully, "Earth has no interest in conquest or aggression against species that pose no threat to us or those under our protection. We answered the Vellani's call for help because genocide is unacceptable. We fought the Korath because they left us no choice." "But you killed their emperor," the minister pressed. "You eliminated their entire command structure. These are not the actions of a defensive species." Dan's expression hardened slightly. "Minister, the Korath exterminated 11 Vellani worlds before we arrived. Billions of innocent beings died while the galaxy watched and did nothing. Yes, we killed their emperor. We would do it again to any leader who orders genocide." The Trilarian delegation exchanged nervous glances. Dan's answer was both reassuring and terrifying. Humans would protect innocent species, but they would do so using methods that violated every accepted standard of civilized warfare. Similar conversations took place across known space. Some species, like the peaceful Androrans, immediately requested human protection treaties. Others, like the aggressive hegemony worlds, began rapid military buildups to counter the new human threat. But the most profound changes were happening on worlds that humans had already saved. On Serenity Prime, Council Speaker Thilana faced a crisis that threatened the very foundation of Villani civilization. The younger generation of her people, having witnessed humanity's power firsthand, were beginning to question the pacifist philosophy that had guided their species for millennia. "We were helpless," declared Villana, a young Villani who had watched the orbital battle from the surface. "Billions of our people died because we had no way to protect them. The humans saved us because they were willing to do what we could not." Elder Kildar's response reflected the horror many older Villani felt. "Child, you speak of violence as if it were admirable. Our people have transcended such primitive impulses. We create beauty, pursue knowledge, explore the mysteries of existence. We do not destroy." "And what did that accomplish when the Korath came?" Villana shot back. "Our art, our knowledge, our peaceful exploration, none of it stopped them from murdering our families. Only human weapons could do that." The generational divide was tearing Villani society apart. Some clung to traditional pacifism, arguing that exposure to human culture was corrupting their essential nature. Others demanded that their species develop defensive capabilities, insisting that peace without the ability to protect it was merely helplessness disguised as virtue. Thilana found herself caught between these competing visions of her people's future. The humans had saved them, but at the cost of forcing them to confront uncomfortable truths about their place in a dangerous universe. Captain Ryu's intelligence division had been monitoring these cultural shifts across the galaxy, and the data was troubling. Human intervention had saved the Villani Confederacy, but it had also destabilized the entire region's political balance. "We're seeing 3 distinct reaction patterns," Ryu reported to the Earth Defense Command staff. "Species are either seeking our protection, building up militaries to oppose us, or fragmenting internally as they debate how to respond to our presence." General Kang studied the intelligence reports with growing concern. Unintended consequences. Massive ones. The Zilani Republic is considering preemptive military action against us, convinced we'll eventually turn on them. The hegemony worlds are forming a coalition to contain human aggression. Meanwhile, 17 different species have requested protection treaties. And the species we're already protecting? Ryu's expression grew somber. That's where it gets complicated. The Villani are experiencing social upheaval as their younger generation abandons traditional pacifism. They're asking for human military advisors to help them develop defensive capabilities. Admiral Nam leaned forward. "Are we turning them into us?" "Unknown. But we're definitely changing them. The question is whether that change is beneficial or harmful to their long-term survival." The complexity of these consequences became clear when Captain Sora's patrol encountered a Korath remnant fleet near the edge of human space. The encounter revealed that the Korath Empire, rather than being completely destroyed, had fragmented into dozens of smaller factions, each claiming legitimacy as the true heirs to Emperor Vextar's legacy. "This is Warlord Kexishan of the 3rd Korath Legion," came the transmission from the enemy formation. "We claim no grievance with humanity. Our quarrel was with the false Emperor, who led our people to destruction. Grant us safe passage and we will trouble you no more." Sora faced a dilemma that no human commander had encountered before. These Korath claimed to be fleeing other Korath factions rather than threatening human interests. Did humanity's protection mandate extend to reformed enemies? "Warlord," she replied carefully, "what are your intentions regarding civilian populations in this sector? We seek only to find uninhabited worlds where we can rebuild our civilization according to the old ways, before the madness of conquest consumed our people." It was a reasonable request, but Sora knew that accepting it would set a precedent with galaxy-wide implications. If humanity granted safe passage to reformed Korath, other species would question whether humans could distinguish between genuine rehabilitation and tactical deception. The decision she made would be studied in diplomatic academies for generations. "Warlord, your ships will be escorted to the uninhabited Rigel system. Any deviation from the prescribed course, any approach to inhabited worlds, any aggressive action whatsoever, will result in your immediate destruction." You may rebuild your civilization, but you will do so under human observation. The Korath accepted these terms, becoming the first former enemy species to exist under human protection, a status that was simultaneously sanctuary and prison. Back on Earth, political leaders grappled with the implications of humanity's new role. They had answered a cry for help, but in doing so, they had made themselves responsible for maintaining galactic stability. "We're not conquerors," President Lee addressed the Global Assembly, "but we've become the ultimate arbiters of acceptable behavior in our region of space. Every species looks to us for protection or fears us as a threat. That's not a position we sought, but it's one we must handle responsibly." The weight of that responsibility was becoming clear. Humanity had gained the power to protect the innocent and punish the guilty, but they had also gained the burden of deciding who deserved protection and who deserved punishment. The galaxy had cried for help, and Earth had answered with overwhelming force. Now everyone was learning that salvation and subjugation could look remarkably similar from the outside, and that the line between protector and ruler was thinner than anyone had imagined. As reports flowed in from across human-protected space, one thing became certain: the galaxy would never return to what it had been before humanity answered that first distress call. The only question was whether the new order would be better or worse than what it replaced. The Korath Emperor Vextar received news of the Serenity Prime defeat while reviewing plans to strip mine the mineral-rich worlds of the Proxima Cluster. The report seemed impossible. His finest fleet, commanded by his most experienced admirals, completely destroyed by a previously unknown species with inferior numbers. "Impossible," he declared, his metallic voice echoing through the crystal command chambers of his flagship. "No organic species possesses such military capability. The report must be flawed." His military advisor, General Kexmore, displayed the battle recordings captured by fleeing ships. "My Emperor, the humans fight unlike any species we have encountered. They use coordinated pack tactics, psychological warfare, and weapons specifically designed to kill rather than disable." Vextar studied the recordings with growing anger. The systematic destruction of his fleet was not the desperate flailing of prey animals. It was the calculated assault of apex predators who had turned warfare into a precise science. "Summon the first battle fleet," he commanded. "I will personally oversee the destruction of these humans and their Villani pets." The first battle fleet was the pride of the Korath Empire. 800 ships, including the Emperor's own Dreadnought, the Worldbreaker. It was a force that had conquered 12 species and devastated 40 star systems. No enemy had ever faced it and survived. The fleet began its journey toward human space, but humanity was already preparing for their arrival. General Kang stood in the war room deep beneath Earth's surface, studying holographic displays that showed every known Korath position across the galaxy. Intelligence reports flowed in from human scout ships, intercepted communications, and analysis of debris from the Serenity Prime battle. "The Emperor is bringing everything," he reported to the assembled Earth Defense Command staff. 800 ships, including their largest vessel. This isn't just revenge. They're trying to send a message to the galaxy about what happens when you oppose them. Admiral Nam, commander of Earth's hunter-killer squadrons, smiled coldly. "Then we'll send a message of our own. How long until they reach our defensive perimeter?" 6 days at their current speed. "But General, they're not heading for Earth directly. Intelligence suggests they're planning to attack every human colony and outpost they can find first. They want to break our will to resist." The room fell silent as the implications became clear. The Korath weren't just seeking military victory. They were planning genocide on a scale that would make their attack on the Villani look merciful. "Recommendations?" General Kang asked. Captain Yule's engineering corps had already been working on the problem. "We've had 3 weeks to study Korath technology from the ships we destroyed at Serenity Prime. Their armor is strong but not adaptive. Their weapons are powerful but predictable. Most importantly, their command structure is rigidly hierarchical. Meaning, cut off the head and the body dies. They don't train individual ship commanders to think independently. Every major decision goes through their chain of command back to the Emperor himself." Admiral Nam leaned forward. "You're suggesting we target their command structure directly?" "I'm suggesting we kill their Emperor," Yule replied bluntly. "Take out Vextar and his senior staff, and the entire Korath fleet becomes a collection of ships with no coordinated leadership. It was a bold strategy that violated several galactic warfare conventions, not because it was forbidden, but because no species had ever been ruthless enough to deliberately target enemy leadership. Wars were supposed to be contests between military forces, not assassination campaigns against heads of state. General Kang considered the proposal. Do we have assets in position to attempt such an operation? Captain Ryu's intelligence division has been tracking the Emperor's movements since the first attack on Villani space, Admiral Nam replied. We know his route, his escort formation, and his standard operational procedures. The question isn't whether we can kill him, it's whether we want to establish the precedent that human warfare includes leadership, elimination. The Korath established that precedent when they decided to exterminate entire species, General Kang said firmly. Authorization granted. Eliminate the Emperor and as much of his command structure as possible. The plan that emerged was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. Instead of meeting the Korath fleet in conventional battle, humanity would strike at multiple points simultaneously, using tactics that no galactic civilization had ever employed. Captain Sewell's ground assault teams would target Korath supply bases and communication relays, cutting off their ability to coordinate fleet movements. Colonel Bora's psychological warfare specialists would flood Korath networks with carefully crafted disinformation, creating confusion and mistrust among enemy commanders. Most dramatically, Admiral Nam's hunter-killer squadrons would penetrate deep into Korath-controlled space to hunt down and eliminate the Emperor's flagship while it was separated from the main fleet. The operation began 48 hours before the Korath fleet was scheduled to enter human space. Sewell's team struck simultaneously at 17 different targets, using tactics that the Korath had never encountered. Instead of trying to hold territory, the humans appeared, destroyed their objectives, and vanished before enemy reinforcements could respond. They fight like ghosts, one Korath commander reported. They strike from nowhere and disappear into shadows. How do we defend against enemies who refuse to stand and fight? Colonel Bora's information warfare campaign proved even more devastating. The Korath had built their empire on fear and overwhelming force, but their rigid command structure made them vulnerable to misdirection and false orders. Human intelligence specialists, having cracked Korath communication codes, began sending contradictory commands to different parts of the enemy fleet. Ships received orders to change course, alter formations, and attack targets that didn't exist. The careful coordination that had made the Korath Empire so effective began to break down as confusion spread through their ranks. But the most audacious part of the human plan was Admiral Nam's personal mission to eliminate Emperor Vextar, the Soul's Pride. Now reinforced with additional armor and weapons, led a small squadron of the most advanced human warships through hyperspace toward the Emperor's projected position. They avoided all major Korath patrol routes, using intelligence gathered from captured enemy navigation systems to find safe passage through hostile territory. Contact, the sensor officer reported as they dropped out of hyperspace in the Kepler Nebula. One large vessel, matching the profile of the Emperor's flagship. Minimal escort, 3 heavy cruisers. Admiral Nam studied the tactical display. The Worldbreaker was even larger than intelligence reports had suggested, a massive vessel bristling with weapons and armor. It was designed to intimidate enemies into submission before battle even began. Remember, Nam addressed his squadron commanders, we're not here to conquer territory or capture prisoners. We're here to send a message that no one threatens human-protected worlds and lives to regret it. The attack came without warning or surrender demands. Human ships materialized around the Imperial formation and opened fire immediately, targeting specific weak points that Captain Yule's engineering analysis had identified. The Worldbreaker's escorts died within minutes, their massive armor pierced by concentrated human firepower. The flagship itself proved more resilient, its shields and armor absorbing damage that would have destroyed lesser vessels. But humanity had learned from every previous encounter. Nuclear torpedoes detonated inside the enemy ship's shield perimeter. Kinetic weapons targeted critical systems rather than trying to penetrate the massive armor. Energy weapons carved precise holes in specific locations, allowing boarding parties to enter the ship directly. Emperor Vextar died on his own bridge, cut down by Major Sewell's assault team as they fought their way through the ship's internal defenses. His final transmission to the Korath Empire was a warning. Do not underestimate the humans. They are not like us. They are not like anyone. The destruction of the Emperor and his flagship created chaos throughout the Korath fleet. Without central leadership, individual commanders began making their own decisions about whether to continue the attack on human space or withdraw to defend their own territories. The First Battle Fleet, the largest military force the Korath Empire had ever assembled, began to fragment and scatter. Some ships pressed forward with their original mission. Others turned back to protect Korath worlds. Still others simply fled to neutral space, their crews unwilling to face an enemy that had proven capable of killing their god emperor. General Kang watched the tactical reports flow into Earth Defense Command with grim satisfaction. In less than a week, humanity had shattered the most powerful military force in the known galaxy through a combination of superior tactics, psychological warfare, and simple, ruthless efficiency. But he also knew that the galaxy would never be the same. Other species had witnessed humanity's approach to warfare, and they were already choosing sides based on fear rather than principle. The humans had proven they could protect those who asked for help, but they had also proven they were willing to do things that no other species would consider acceptable. The emergency signal came through at 0347 hours, piercing the quiet hum of the Earth Defense Fleet battleship Soul's Pride. Captain Hana was already awake, nursing her third cup of coffee and reviewing supply reports when the communication officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call. Multiple frequencies, repeating pattern. It's not human." Hana set down her coffee and walked to the bridge. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, but somewhere out there, someone was crying for help. The communication officer, Lieutenant Kim, looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Play it," Hana ordered. The bridge filled with a sound that made everyone stop what they were doing. It wasn't just a message, it was pure desperation given voice. The translation software worked quickly, converting alien sounds into words that humans could understand. "To any who can hear this plea, we are the Vellani Confederacy. Our worlds burn. Our children die. The Korath Empire devours everything we have built over 10,000 years of peace. We have no weapons that can stop them. We have no warriors to fight them. If there is any mercy in the galaxy, if there is any justice among the stars, please, help us." The message repeated 3 times, then silence returned to the bridge. Hana stared at the communication display, watching the signal strength indicators pulse weakly. The call had traveled across vast distances, growing weaker with each light year until it barely reached their sensors. "How far?" she asked. "Signal origin is approximately 47 light years from our position, Captain. The Kepler sector near the Outer Rim territories." Hana knew the area from her academy studies. It was on the edge of known space, where Earth's exploration missions had detected several alien civilizations but made no official contact. The policy was to observe and learn before revealing humanity's presence. That policy might have to change. "Send a priority message to Earth Command," Hana ordered. "Include the full distress call in our position. Mark it urgent." The response came faster than expected. Admiral Tay's voice filled the bridge just 2 hours later, transmitted across the quantum communication network that connected all human ships to Earth. "Captain Hana, you are to proceed immediately to the source of the distress signal. Take Soul's Pride and any escort vessels in your sector. This is a first contact situation with unknown parameters. Rules of engagement are at your discretion, but remember, someone asked for help and Earth is going to answer." Hana felt a chill run down her spine. She had trained for first contact scenarios, but never under these circumstances. The distress call suggested a war was happening, and Earth was about to insert itself into the middle of it. "Helm, set course for the Kepler sector. Maximum sustainable speed. Aye, Captain. Course laid in." The Soul's Pride turned toward the source of the signal, its engines building to full power. Behind it, 3 escort destroyers fell into formation. It wasn't much of a fleet, but it was what they had in this sector of space. As they traveled, Hana studied everything Earth's intelligence services had gathered about the region. The Vellani Confederacy appeared to be a collection of peaceful species spread across 12 star systems. Their technology was advanced but focused on research, art, and exploration rather than warfare. They had never developed significant military capabilities because they had never needed them. The Korath Empire was different. Earth's long-range sensors had detected their expansion over the past decade, but the data was limited. They seemed to be a conquest-oriented species, taking worlds and stripping them of resources. What resources they wanted and why they had suddenly turned aggressive remained mysteries. "Captain," the science officer called out, interrupting her research. "We're receiving more signals from the target area. The distress calls are getting stronger, but they're also different." "Different how?" "The first message was desperate but controlled. These new ones are—" The officer paused, looking uncomfortable. "They're screaming, Captain. Pure terror." Hannah closed her eyes for a moment. Whatever was happening in the Kepler sector was getting worse while they traveled toward it. The Soul's Pride was still 3 days away at maximum speed. "Any response from other vessels? Other species in the area?" "Negative, Captain. We're monitoring all frequencies, but no one else seems to be answering their calls." That information troubled Hannah more than she wanted to admit. The galaxy was full of advanced civilizations, many of them older and more powerful than humanity. If none of them were responding to the Volani's cries for help, there might be a reason. Perhaps this Korath Empire was more dangerous than Earth realized. "Send another message to Admiral Tay," she ordered. "Request any available intelligence on both the Volani Confederacy and the Korath Empire. Also request permission to contact other human ships in nearby sectors." The response came during the night shift. Admiral Tay's message was brief but clear. "Intelligence package transmitted. Additional human vessels have been dispatched to support your mission. Remember, Captain, humanity doesn't abandon those who ask for help. Whatever you find out there, we'll face it together." Hannah reviewed the intelligence files in her ready room. The information was limited, gathered mostly from long-range observations and intercepted communications. The Volani appeared to be exactly what their distress call suggested: a peaceful confederation of species who had never developed significant military technology. They were herbivorous, had no concept of warfare as humans understood it, and had spent centuries focused on art, philosophy, and scientific research. The Korath were harder to understand. They appeared to be silicon-based life forms, possibly cybernetic in nature. Their ships were massive and heavily armed. They strip-mined entire worlds, taking rare minerals and leaving dead rocks behind. What made them particularly dangerous was their systematic approach to conquest. They didn't just take territory, they completely eliminated any species that might resist them. On the second day of travel, the distress call stopped. The silence was more terrifying than the screaming had been. Lieutenant Kim monitored all frequencies, adjusting sensors and checking equipment, but the result was the same. The Volani Confederacy had gone quiet. "Captain," he reported with a grim expression, "either they've been completely silenced, or there's no one left to send messages." Hannah finished. "Maintain course. Increase speed to maximum emergency power." The Soul's Pride pushed harder toward the Kepler sector, but Hannah feared they would arrive too late. The galaxy had ignored the Volani's cries for help, and now humanity might be racing toward nothing but empty space and dead worlds. But Admiral Tay had been right about one thing: humanity didn't abandon those who asked for help. Even if they arrived too late to save the Volani, they would make sure someone paid for what had happened. The Korath Empire was about to learn that Earth answered distress calls in the only way it knew how, with overwhelming force and absolute determination. The emergency signal came through at 3:47 hours, piercing the quiet hum of the Earth Defense Fleet battleship Soul's Pride. Captain Hannah was already awake, nursing her third cup of coffee and reviewing supply reports when the communication officer's voice crackled over the intercom. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call. Multiple frequencies, repeating pattern. It's not human." Hannah set down her coffee and walked to the bridge. The stars stretched endlessly beyond the viewport, but somewhere out there, someone was crying for help. The communication officer, Lieutenant Kim, looked up from his station with wide eyes. "Play it," Hannah ordered. The bridge filled with a sound that made everyone stop what they were doing. It wasn't just a message, it was pure desperation given voice. The translation software worked quickly, converting alien sounds into words that humans could understand. To any who can hear this plea: "We are the Volani Confederacy. Our worlds burn. Our children die. The Korath Empire devours everything we have built over 10,000 years of peace. We have no weapons that can stop them. We have no warriors to fight them. If there is any mercy in the galaxy, If there is any justice among the stars, please, help us. The message repeated 3 times, then silence returned to the bridge. Hana stared at the communication display, watching the signal strength indicators pulse weakly. The call had traveled across vast distances, growing weaker with each light year until it barely reached their sensors. How far? She asked. Signal origin is approximately 47 light years from our position, Captain. The Kepler sector, near the Outer Rim territories. Hana knew the area from her academy studies. It was on the edge of known space, where Earth's exploration missions had detected several alien civilizations but made no official contact. The policy was to observe and learn before revealing humanity's presence. That policy might have to change. Send a priority message to Earth Command, Hana ordered. Include the full distress call and our position. Mark it urgent. The response came faster than expected. Admiral Tay's voice filled the bridge just 2 hours later, transmitted across the quantum communication network that connected all human ships to Earth. Captain Hana, you are to proceed immediately to the source of the distress signal. Take Soul's Pride and any escort vessels in your sector. This is a first contact situation with unknown parameters. Rules of engagement are at your discretion, but remember, someone asked for help and Earth is going to answer. Hana felt a chill run down her spine. She had trained for first contact scenarios, but never under these circumstances. The distress call suggested a war was happening and Earth was about to insert itself into the middle of it. Helm set course for the Kepler sector. Maximum sustainable speed. Aye, Captain. Course laid in. The Soul's Pride turned toward the source of the signal, its engines building to full power. Behind it, 3 escort destroyers fell into formation. It wasn't much of a fleet, but it was what they had in this sector of space. As they traveled, Hana studied everything Earth's intelligence services had gathered about the region. The Villani Confederacy appeared to be a collection of peaceful species spread across 12 star systems. Their technology was advanced but focused on research, art, and exploration rather than warfare. They had never developed significant military capabilities because they had never needed them. The Korath Empire was different. Earth's long-range sensors had detected their expansion over the past decade, but the data was limited. They seemed to be a conquest-oriented species, taking worlds and stripping them of resources. What resources they wanted and why they had suddenly turned aggressive remained mysteries. Captain, the science officer called out, interrupting her research. We're receiving more signals from the target area. The distress calls are getting stronger, but they're also different. Different how? The first message was desperate but controlled. These new ones are... The officer paused, looking uncomfortable. They're screaming, Captain. Pure terror. Hana closed her eyes for a moment. Whatever was happening in the Kepler sector was getting worse while they traveled toward it. The Soul's Pride was still 3 days away at maximum speed. Any response from other vessels? Other species in the area? Negative, Captain. We're monitoring all frequencies, but no one else seems to be answering their calls. That information troubled Hana more than she wanted to admit. The galaxy was full of advanced civilizations, many of them older and more powerful than humanity. If none of them were responding to the Villani's cries for help, there might be a reason. Perhaps this Korath Empire was more dangerous than Earth realized. Send another message to Admiral Tay, she ordered. Request any available intelligence on both the Villani Confederacy and the Korath Empire. Also request permission to contact other human ships in nearby sectors. The response came during the night shift. Admiral Tay's message was brief but clear. Intelligence package transmitted. Additional human vessels have been dispatched to support your mission. Remember, Captain, humanity doesn't abandon those who ask for help. Whatever you find out there, we'll face it together. Hana reviewed the intelligence files in her ready room. The information was limited, gathered mostly from long-range observations and intercepted communications. The Villani appeared to be exactly what their distress call suggested. A peaceful confederation of species who had never developed significant military technology. They were herbivorous, had no concept of warfare as humans understood it, and had spent centuries focused on art, philosophy, and scientific research. The Korath were harder to understand. They appeared to be silicon-based life forms, possibly cybernetic in nature. Their ships were massive and heavily armed. They strip-mined entire worlds, taking rare minerals and leaving dead rocks behind. What made them particularly dangerous was their systematic approach to conquest. They didn't just take territory, They completely eliminated any species that might resist them. On the second day of travel, the distress calls stopped. The silence was more terrifying than the screaming had been. Lieutenant Kim monitored all frequencies, adjusting sensors and checking equipment, but the result was the same. The Villani Confederacy had gone quiet. "Captain," he reported with a grim expression, "either they've been completely silenced or there's no one left to send messages," Hana finished. "Maintain course. Increase speed to maximum emergency power." The Soul's Pride pushed harder toward the Kepler sector, but Hana feared they would arrive too late. The galaxy had ignored the Villani's cries for help, and now humanity might be racing toward nothing but empty space and dead worlds. But Admiral Tay had been right about one thing. Humanity didn't abandon those who asked for help. Even if they arrived too late to save the Villani, they would make sure someone paid for what had happened. The Korath Empire was about to learn that Earth answered distress calls in the only way it knew how, with overwhelming force and absolute determination.